And the first is this story when you were a very young child, of the way you were tormented at school, and where your interest in bullies comes from, as having been on the wrong end of it. There's no right end of it. And the story, particularly the episode with you and the principal or the head teacher and the bathroom. Could you just describe what your life was like when you were 4 years old?
It was really hell. Now, most kids were you bullied as a kid? Most kids are bullied to some extent.
Not like you.
Well, I was bullied because I was very short, and I think anybody who's different in any way really is a target of bullies. And I didn't want to go to school, and every day it was a big deal, even getting on the bus. I didn't want to be on the playground. I wanted to be, because I was basically afraid. And with that fear, and I was afraid for good reason, because the kids, the first graders and the second graders, children don't know how mean they can be.
They don't know the effects of what they do.
They don't really understand. And I think it came one day when I was in kindergarten, and the second graders met me in the boys' room and turned me upside down, hugged me over the toilet, and said that they were going to plunge me into the toilet head first. And I just screamed, got out of there, ran down the corridor, got back to the kindergarten, and I didn't want to ever go into the boys' room again. Well, if you want to know the story, you've got to read the book.
No. A lot of people got the bundled deal here.
Well,
you've already sold them.
Okay. To make a very long story much shorter, I devised a system over the years, when I was between the ages of 5 and 8, of having an older boy kind of watch over me and keep the bullies at bay. And Michael, you know the end of the story because you read the book. When I was a freshman in college, I learned that one of the boys who, when I was 8 years old, had watched over me and kept the bullies at bay was named Mickey. I called him Mickey. I didn't know his last name when I was a kid, but I learned when I was a freshman in college that Mickey had been among the civil rights workers who had gone down to Mississippi to register voters when Mickey was in his 20s. And he was named Michael Schwerner. And he, along with 2 other civil rights workers, were brutally murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. And when I discovered that my protector had been brutally murdered by the real bullies, but not by kids holding me upside down, not by childhood tormentors, but by the real bullies, it really did change my life in terms of seeing bullying and seeing the results of bullying all around. Black people being bullied by white supremacists, employees being bullied by employers, women being bullied by men, people with power having the power to bully and exploit, harass, diminish, belittle other people without power. And I became perhaps acutely, perhaps too much, perhaps oversensitive to these issues of bullying and power. And so that when the bully-in-chief, Donald Trump, became president, my curiosity, and it was more curiosity than anything else, was triggered. How did this happen? How was it possible that this country would elect and then obviously re-elect a a bully, a brutish bully.
It's his chief trait, this bullying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's his cheap trick, did you
it's
say?
chief trait. It's
Chief trait, yes.
It's the most important thing about it.
Yeah.
So it's funny. The death of that young man in Mississippi was the second thing I wanted to ask you about. So you already got to it. You say it changed your life. I would have thought by the time you got to your freshman year in college, you would have already been extremely sensitive to unfairness, to inequality. Is that so? Where does that interest runs through your work, runs through your class? I want to talk a little bit about your class. But kind of two questions here. One is, when did you first have a sense that you had that gene, like really concerned with that subject, like interested in the weak, the vulnerable? And the second thing is, when did you start to write? Like, your writing life has been so important to your career and your life, and doesn't just follow from a career in government service or the Yale Law School that you are going to become a writer, and you're quite a natural writer. When did that emerge in your life?
Can I ask for equal time? Because I am very curious about your illustrious career as a writer. Well, I will answer. I will answer your question.
I feel like my role here is to be the stripper's pole.
No. I think we have enough time.
Dance around me.
I think we have enough time.
This row. I'm supposed to stay here kind of in a neutral way.
No. We've lost the whole point, but I'm going to ask you, because this is a discussion, and I will answer your question. And your question, I can't remember. No, your question was, when did I first become sensitive to these issues of unfairness?
Connected up to your writing.
And connected up to writing. Well, I think it was very early on, maybe even earlier than kindergarten, because my parents moved to this little waspy town in New York State, 7 miles north of New York City. When I was 2, we were the only Jewish family within 50, 60, 80 miles. And we were greeted by a group of town elders. My mother thought that they were actually there coming to our house to welcome us. But they were, according to my parents, and I don't remember this, but they came in and they said, "Mr. and Mrs. Reich, this is a Christian community, and we don't think you will be happy here." I knew nothing of this, but I did sense my parents' feelings of being outsiders, of not being wanted. My father owned a little woman's clothing store. He worked extremely hard, 6 days a week. My mother helped him. I was also aware of how difficult it was for him. He would come home at night and he would most nights he had an upset stomach from the pressure. So all of that together, I think, made me aware of issues of unfairness, of differences, of being outsiders or being insiders, and that's always been there.
Sean Tui was in my class from kindergarten through 12th grade. He was a year older. He was kind of a year older than me. I was young for the class. He was old for the class. He was a spectacular athlete. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds and the New Jersey Nets to play both basketball and baseball. And I played sports with him growing up. That was the extent of our relationship. Had not seen him since high school. When I land in Memphis to actually talk about Moneyball, and I was thinking about writing something about my high school baseball coach, and I thought, Sean had this kind of deep relationship with the coach that I had, and I ought to go see Sean and talk to him just a bit about it. So I told him I was coming in. He comes and picks me up at the airport. So I haven't seen it in 20 years. And the first thing out of his mouth when he sees me is not, "Hey, how you doing?" or "big hug." He looks up at me and goes, "So who writes your books?" and I said, Sean, I write my books. And he goes, "Man, I see you on TV. You're great on TV. You're great marketing." He says, you sell those things well. He says, "But who actually puts the words on the page?" And I said, "Sean, I put the words on the page." And he goes, "No, you don't. You're dumb shit just like me. You sat in the back of Dr. Francis's English class and you got C's." And if you asked anybody who knew me, I bet if you asked people who knew you when you were a kid, they'd say, "Oh, I'm not that surprised." If you ask anybody who knew me when I was a kid, they think it's some sort of fraud has been perpetrated. And this is not just self-deprecation. This is honest self.
It sounds like honest self-deprecation.
Yeah, it's great. But so I get to. I'll be quick because we need to get back to you. But I get to. I slid into Princeton because I was a baseball player and my dad went. And I kind of woke up, as I said, into my senior year of high school. So I started to become a good student. And I got to Princeton, and no one there. I never wrote for a school newspaper. Never had the faintest notion of myself as a writer. So this is like a lesson for anybody who's got kids or any kids. Like you never know what's inside someone. I get to my senior year in college, and to get out of Princeton, you had to write a thesis. I was an art history major. I was an art history major. You don't mention this in the book.
No, I don't. I've never heard.
You withhold. There's so much. This book is 400 pages long. How
did you leave out the fact I've never heard? It's not in any biography that
it comes up
that you were an art history major at Princeton.
It's there is a small army of unemployed art historians I hear from because they hear the word is out. So I fell in love with art history.
I did too. What was your period?
Early Renaissance, early Italian Renaissance.
I was 19th century American.
Oh, that's right. A lot of it interested me. It was driven by who the professors were.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
But there was this question of it. So I wrote my thesis. It doesn't matter what it was about, but it was about Donatello. And it was an original thesis. A thesis was not like any other academic exercise I'd ever engaged in. It was a wholly immersive. It took a year to do. It was the length of a book, a small book. And something happened to me. I just loved it. And I thought, oh, this is what I meant to do. I meant to be an art historian. And I went to my I went to my thesis defense thinking that, and the thesis got a good grade. And the professor, the guy who ran the department, was my advisor. And there was a little part of him that could not believe I had written this thing.
That was your theme.
He thought of me as this kind of charming preppy from New Orleans who was kind of airhead's too strong, but it was just a little, just like unserious. And I can remember him. I remember saying to him, like, I think maybe this means I should be an art historian. He said it was publishable, which he said he said we don't see these things often. It was an extraordinary piece of work for coming out of me. And he said, so once he established I had written it, I was like, well, I think I want to be an art historian. He says, you're not an art historian. He says, you're never going to be an art historian. And he also said, he was actually kind of paternalistic. They're not going to be art historians, really. The whole industry is collapsing. So don't do that. And so I said, in the moment, the career path was not as obvious as it had been for him. And so he said, I in that defense, I remember thinking, oh, not an art historian, maybe this means I want to write. Maybe I'm a writer. And I said to him, as he was telling me what he thought of this, I said, what did you think about the writing? And his pipe comes down and he looks at me and says, put it this way, never try to make a living at it. And I got to rub his nose in that. I gave the Princeton commencement speech about a decade ago, and I got to tell that story to the whole Princeton University community. Anyway, but the day after he was elected president, he fired his 550-person transition team. And I thought, we know a couple of things about Donald Trump. He doesn't know anything about anything, and he certainly doesn't know anything about the government. And he's going to be running this thing. And that he didn't have any interest in the mechanism for learning about this thing he was going to run riveted me. And I thought, you know, if he isn't going to get the briefings that the Obama administration put 1,000 people to the task of creating over 6 months, then I can. And that this will be fun. Like it was just like, this is literary material, that I can wander the government and walk in any department and have it explained to me by people who are hungry to explain it to the people who are going to be running it. And so the fifth risk was, they ended up being the book, and it starts with, the first briefing I get is how to run the nuclear arsenal. And I thought, man, this is just great. Like I'm the only one who now knows, you know, that everyone else is leaving. And the reader will be in on the joke.
How did you get them to give you that briefing? I mean,
they were in a room off Connecticut Avenue that had left their offices and been, and they had the presentation, and they sure, come on in. There was some stuff that was classified that they couldn't tell me, but I got the gist, and I could. You know, it was. You are lucky. You are still free as a civilian. But what I realized is that, one, that this material, which might have been otherwise kind of inert, is basically a civics lesson. It's me wandering around the federal government trying to figure out what the hell it does, because our president, who's supposed to be running it, doesn't care. This material had been electrified by Donald Trump. And it was, for what it was, an enormous success. Like, there was 3 articles in Vanity Fair, and there was a huge market for it, and it was fun to do. And in the process of doing that, I didn't realize it until the very end, that these people, and a lot of these people who worked in the government, were legitimate literary characters. They were mission-driven. They were curious, and they were odd characters, a lot of them. And when I finally, when I was done with the fifth risk, I came back to write the paperback, and I grabbed almost arbitrarily one of these characters and wrote him up as I would write, you know, a character sketch. And the material was so good, I thought, I've just got to come back to this. And the Who's Government book is just that, but we're doing it with a bunch of other writers. And I'm coming back to it right now. I'm in the agonizing stage of another book, a book about this Trump administration's collision with the civil service. So I've gotten interested in it, but I come in, I sort of foul hooked the subject. I did not come in thinking I really want to write about government. I just got naturally interested because of what's going on in the world. And I didn't want to get to this till later, but now we're here. You were Secretary of Labor. By the way, in the film, you got your cabinet chair that you in your office, and you're trying to dispose of it. You call the White House and offer to give it back. They don't know what you're talking about. In Berkeley, you just put the chair out on the sidewalk. It's not that hard. But would it be recycled? Do you think? No, someone will pick it up. Yeah, someone will pick it up. But when you get to that job, you'd worked in government before, but when you're running the labor department, do you have a similar sort of response to it? Like, wow, I didn't know I'm surprised by the caliber of the person here. What is one of the biggest surprises was the quality of the civil service, the permanent career people in the labor department. Now, I went to visit my predecessor before I took the job because I just wanted to know what she knew about the labor department. And I went into this just gigantic office. I mean, it was the biggest office I'd ever seen. And in the distance outside, these windows that were the floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides of this giant room, I could see the Capitol building, this majestic, powerful dome. And I was very moved. I sat down with the woman who was the previous Secretary of Labor, and I said, well, how do I do this?
tell me how to do it. And she was a Republican. And she said, you're a Democrat. All the people here, they'll love you. You don't have to worry about a thing. But she was really referring to the career civil service. And her experience had been, and this is true of most of the Republican appointees to cabinet positions, that the civil service is their nemesis. The civil service is trying to stop them from wrecking what the departments ought to be doing. Well, my experience was just the opposite. My experience was exactly as she said. I have never worked with a group of people as talented, as dedicated, and as self-effacing. They just didn't want to take credit. I wanted to, at various public events, I wanted to single them out. They didn't want them. They just wanted to do their work, and their work was incredibly important.
Do you think that they were, in fact, obstructing her? Do you think that she had a legitimate point?
Yes. Well, not entirely. That is, I think that the civil service I came to know, the public service, the career people, they had an attitude which was, this too shall pass. The political appointees, Robert Reich, my predecessor, anybody, will not be here very long. So whatever you don't like about them, don't worry. They'll leave.
You're a substitute teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I felt a little bit like that. But after, they didn't think I was going to stay more than 2 years. Mostly, a lot of cabinet people, they leave after 2 years. I stayed 4.5 years, and by the 3rd year, I had enough credibility and knew them well enough that we started to really do some dynamite stuff.
Does it make you wonder if we've got the proper structure for our government, and people coursing through at the very top of these organizations who are only going to be there for a couple of years, that they aren't really, that we need a deeper study?
It's a good question. I mean, right now, obviously, we're talking about the federal government.
Yeah.
Now, none of this is about state or local. We're talking about the federal government. The federal government, obviously, we all know, is shut down, is not operating, and the people who are so-called essential workers are not getting paid. Air traffic controllers are not getting paid. I want them paid. For obvious reasons, and fairness, but and the head of our government really does not respect people working in the federal government. I think that's clear. And the head of OMB, Office Management and Budget, Russell Vogt, let's have a bit of respect. Russell Vogt really doesn't, I think, have any respect or any admiration whatsoever for any federal civil servant. I mean, he's breaking the law. They're all breaking the law.
Yeah. Yes.
I've never seen.
We just took a right turn onto a road I didn't want to get on until a little later, because I have a feeling that this is going to be all about Trump. I want to stop you for 1 sec, because I was
just getting going.
I know you're just getting going. So let's do it this way, because you've given a lot of advice to a lot of presidents and to presidents and presidential candidates. Has anybody ever taken it? That's not an easy question to answer. I've been reading your book. It's between the lines.
Yeah, I think that a few of them tried to. Bill Clinton did, actually, for the first year of his administration, I believe. But coming up with policy ideas, and I don't know, I want you to know that I respect schools of public policy. I don't just respect them, I love them. And the Goldman School of Public Policy is the best school of public policy in the world. However,
I don't doubt that, but how do we know?
However, public policy and politics don't always go together. And if you don't have enough political will, it's very hard to do what the policy process might suggest is the best outcome. So it's always been a pull and tug, Michael. Watch, read. So here's what happened. Well, those of you who have read my book will know this, but I'm going to assume you haven't yet had a chance to read my book. At the Cheese Board Collective, where I go almost every morning to get my coffee, I come across people, and this morning, in fact, everyone, but this morning especially, two people came up to me and said, at different points in time, they said, I love the film, but I haven't read the book. You ready?
Yeah, listen.
So here's what happened. There's a fellow named Lewis Powell. Lewis Powell was asked by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 1971 to write a memo that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce could distribute to all of the businesses, big businesses in America, that would explain to the businesses why they had to not just support the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but also start pouring big money into politics. And Lewis Powell, this is before he was a Supreme Court justice, he wrote this memo, and it became the thing that every CEO in America had read, certainly by 1973, 74, and it was all about, if you don't really come up with money, if your corporation does not become a major force in American politics, then we are going to have the special interests, and by special interests, Lewis Powell was talking about the environmentalists, and the consumer groups, and the Naderites, and all of the, and labor, organized labor. We're going to have all of these groups starting to undermine American capitalism. And so it is up to you. They are already formulating, they're already becoming more and more powerful. And Lewis Powell really put the fear of God into the C-suites of America. And after that memo was widely distributed, that is the time, that was the beginning of big money, big corporate money in American politics. And I can trace year by year by year, and certainly decade by decade, how we get to Donald Trump. Because once you have that much money in politics, you have widening inequality, because the people who have a lot of money, and the CEOs of companies, and the major investors, and the Wall Street people, they know and discover, if they didn't know before, they can get a lot of benefits in terms of lower taxes, and they can get government to stop worrying about monopolies, and stop worrying about, and not allow workers to organize in terms of labor unions. And they can get a lot of stuff that they want, regulatory rollbacks, and they can get it, and they can make more money. And that generates even more lobbying and more money and more public relations in American politics. And Washington turns from a backwater, a sleepy, seedy backwater town, southern backwater, into a glittering, rich, national emerald city. And what happens? American workers get shafted. And as American workers get shafted, they get angry. And as they get angry, the Democratic Party that should have been there for them is drinking at the same trough as the Republican Party in terms of campaign finance. And so nobody is there for average working people. And average working people lose their jobs, they lose their sense of their place in American society, their sense of status and honor, and they feel that the elites are shafting them. And they are.
They're not wrong.
They're right.
I mean, the financial crisis was where this all comes to.
And it comes to a head in 2008. They see the banks getting bailed out. Not a single CEO of any major bank goes to jail, even though the banks caused millions of Americans to lose their homes, their savings, their jobs, and the banks were bailed out, but the average homeowners that were underwater, they didn't get bailed out. In a Democratic administration. And people said, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Mm-hmm. And out of there, then you see the Tea Party movement on the right, and what was then called the Occupy movement on the left, and then on the right, you eventually get Donald Trump, and on the left, you eventually get Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm. That it?
Oh no, I have much more.
No, but
We have to read the book.
What I'm wondering is your class, though. Is this class? What is this? What? Give us
the purpose of the class.
Yeah,
the purpose of the class. Well, first of all, you have to understand. I don't say what I just said to the class.
Right.
I don't want them to know what I think I know. I want them to discover it. The process of education is about discovery. It's about critical thinking skills. I am not going to lecture. I'm going to have them be befuddled and confused, and I'm going to try to provoke, and I'm going to, I'm going to get them all troubled up. And that's what I want.
You've been doing this for what, 40 years?
42.
How have the students changed? And are the Berkeley students different from the Harvard students?
Is oil different from water? Look, I think it's hard to generalize about students and generations and schools, but there's no question in my mind that the University of California, Berkeley students are, number one, better than the Harvard students. Really? No, I'm quite serious. They are less entitled, they are less arrogant, they don't believe that the world owes them anything. And a third of my students here at Cal were transfer students. And that is one of the secrets of the University of California, Berkeley. That's one of the great untold secrets. All of those transfer students from community colleges, they have made it.
Do you still feel that?
Peaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, no, I think he's now heading downward very fast. He's now completely incoherent. If you listen to or watch him.
Was he ever not?
I think he used to be more coherent. I think he's far less coherent today.
Okay.
And his polls are dropping fairly quickly. Once inflation picks up, and it is picking up, and job growth really stalls, and it is stalling, he's going to be even less popular. I think the people around him, it's the J.D. Vance and Vogt and this horrible Stephen Miller. These are the people who I really worry about. They are the ones who are manipulating him now. They want a president who is a little bit out of his mind because it's easier to manipulate.
What happens if Trump is gone tomorrow?
J.D. Vance will be a worse president than Trump.
But do you think he'll be able to control this mob?
Well, it's a good question. I think for a while, and you're talking about the MAGA faithful. I mean, the true MAGAs. First of all, Michael, I don't think there are that many. I mean, I have just finished a book tour, and even before the book tour, I've been all over America, and I talked to people in small towns, and I talked to a lot of Republicans. I'm amazed at how little support there actually is for what's called the MAGA movement. It is not really there. Most people are either non-political or apolitical, or they don't really like politics, or they think Trump the people who I have talked with around America who are Trumpers, what they say is, number one, he's a businessman, so he knows what he's doing. Well, that's, hello. Or number two, they'll say, well, he's a thug, but we need our thug because everybody else in the world has their thugs. The world is a tough place, and so he's prepared to do thuggery. Well, I don't find that a compelling argument. But I think that even the Trumpers that I run into are losing some steam.
What damage has he done that worries you the most?
It's the White House ballroom. I mean, it's supposed to be the people's house, right?
Yeah.
It's the billionaire's house. He's transferring it. He's making it into. He wants the White House to be Versailles. That's his goal. He's putting gold everywhere. And do you know, if you make a contribution to that ballroom, you get your name etched in. Yes, you do. Right? It is. You get your name etched in gold and in plaster and in stone. I mean,
in the same sort of way that you want your name etched in your booth at Saul's. You have. Yeah. I understand that is.
Saul's has not done that.
I know. Maybe this is.
No, I just want a little tiny plaque.
No, but quite serious. What damage has he done that concerns you the most? If this thing flips, I agree. The country's so changeable. Yeah.
The country is very changeable.
And so let's just assume it changes. It changes in some better direction. What has he done that can't be repaired or can't easily be repaired?
Well, the Supreme Court is a big problem.
Yeah.
And I think that when...
Oh, you were in law school with Clarence Thomas. I didn't know that. I read it in your book. So you know the problem.
I was in law school with Clarence Thomas and Bill Hillary, Bill Clinton and Hillary.
Yeah.
And we were in the same classroom together, the three of us, and others. Dick Blumenthal, who was a senator from Connecticut. And the professors used to ask Socratic, using the Socratic method, they would ask questions. Hillary's hand would be the first one in the air. And when she was called on, she would have these perfect answers. I mean, paragraph after paragraph, beautifully constructed syntax and verbs and nouns. I was just floored. I had my hand up half the time. When I was called, my answers were, not very good. Clarence never had his hand up, never said a word, and Bill was never in class. They're technological.
Can I ask where he was?
You can ask.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. He was always in some campaign. He was always on the phone. He was always.
There's a moment. There are a couple of moments in the book. You don't go into the underbelly of these people's lives, but there's a moment when Bill tells you that he's going to run for president, or maybe it was even governor. No, it was president, not governor of Arkansas, and that you're sitting there thinking, is he prepared? Is there any, or if you ask him, are there any skeletons in your closet?
Oh, I did. Yeah. Well, I knew there.
You knew there were.
I knew there were many.
And how did you know there were many?
I refuse to answer that question. No, I mean, he had a reputation.
It wasn't skeletons that were in his closet.
No, there weren't skeletons. They were, somebody in that first campaign, in the 1992 campaign, was put in charge of what were crudely called bimbo eruptions.
To prevent new ones or to cover up the old ones?
Both. I mean, every. And
it was a live volcano.
Oh, it was. I don't know. I don't want to go there. But I asked him on the front porch of my house in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I said, "Are you okay? Are you sure? Skeletons in the closet? Are you all right?" And he said, "Everything under control. Everything's under control."
He said there were no skeletons.
And he said that.
And could you tell that he was not telling you the truth?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you learn to read him that way? Could you tell when he was not being honest?
I could tell. Remember, I met him when
I know.
we were 22 years old.
No.
We were kids. We're going
Describe
across.
how you met him.
We're going across in those days, Rhodes Scholars.
Right.
There were 30 of us, 32 of us, and we were all, the tradition was you take a ship across the Atlantic Ocean together so that you get to know each other. And we did. And it was a very rough sea, and I got very sick, as most of my colleagues did. We all went down to our cabins, and there was a knock on my door. And I thought, oh, God, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I opened it, and there was this tall, gangly Southerner from Arkansas with soup, chicken soup in one hand and crackers in the other hand. And he said, in his southern, syrupy Arkansas accent, he said, I hear you weren't feeling too well, Bob. Or he said, I hear we weren't feeling too well. He said, my name is Bill Clinton. I said, well, I tried not to barf right on it. And I said, well, I really, it's very kind of you. And I took the soup and I said, I can't talk right now. I'm not feeling very well. But Bill, it's nice to meet you. My name is Bob. And he said, isn't it amazing? I said, what? He said, it's amazing that we're here together on this ship going to Oxford. And that phrase, isn't it amazing that we're here, you and I? It's the same phrase he used 20 years later when he was president and he had just sworn me in as labor secretary. He said, isn't it amazing you and I are here?
Did he remember?
I don't know.
I bet he did. How can we change the narrative about public service and government versus one-sided politics?
It would be okay. It's not. I want to distinguish, and this is important. I want to distinguish between simply having a great deal of money, a billion, and abusing that money and that power by getting favors.
Inequality does not bring out the best in people.
I don't think it does. Now, some inequality is necessary. Are inevitable. There are going to be people who are smarter or physically more adept, and I think that any economy, any society needs some inequality to act as a kind of driver, a motivator for people to invest and make jobs and create. But we've gone way beyond what is necessary. Ronald Reagan started this mythology of trickle-down economics. Nothing has ever trickled down. Nothing. And yet we fall for it over and over. George George W., another big tax cut for the very wealthiest, and then Donald Trump, 2 tax cuts for the wealthiest. Donald Trump, remember, first Trump administration, he said the average American family would get $4,000 out of this. Zip.
Yeah.
And then we did it again.
We're down to our last question. We're out of time. How can we remain optimistic about the future of the United States under the current administration and a Supreme Court that enables it? So give us the case for optimism.
Okay, the case for optimism. And number 1, young people. Now, as I said, I've been teaching for 42, 43 years. I stopped teaching, but I do a little bit of teaching part-time. The young people today, you asked me this question and I didn't answer it quite. The young people today, relative to my students 10, 20, certainly 30 or 40 years ago, are more dedicated, more committed, more absolutely certain that they are going to improve the world and heal what has rendered us apart than any generation of students I've ever come across. And that makes me so optimistic. And I feel it constantly, every time I'm with them. That's number 1. Number 2, I look at history. We are now in the second Gilded Age. The first Gilded Age ran from around 1890 through, let's say, the 1920s. That first Gilded Age ended in a big reaction, a big kind of, the country snapped back. It was called the Progressive Era. And why did that happen? Because people like you, Michael, showed America what was actually truthfully occurring. When the gap between the ideal and the reality gets too large in this country, time and again, we reform. We move for reform. We do it. We did it again and again and again. So that's my historical optimism. And thirdly, I'm optimistic because of what I suggested to you. I've traveled around this country and talked to many, many, many Republicans and Trump voters. And there's an essential decency in all of them. I mentioned that one of my best friends was Alan Simpson. Alan Simpson and I saw eye to eye on nothing, literally or philosophically. And yet, I still have a wonderful place in my heart. There are many people like him.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that this country is far better than our current leaders. What else can I tell you?
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Reich.